Oh, congratulations, my friend.
Yes.
Of course, yeah. How'd you like it? I'm glad. How are you? Always. Like, what am I not getting?
Oh, sorry. Oh, I was going to sit there, but you can sit there. I'll stand. Sorry, I put my book down here. Andrew has to sit here. I'll stand. No, I have to go sit.
I know. My baby's 2. George is 6. He goes to first grade. It's crazy. Congratulations. Snacks. Oh, you look great. Yeah, you never on, yeah. Took me a while. Stand awkwardly over here.
All right, well, thank you all for coming. Looks like we have a complete full house, which is good. We have a number of very important issues to do. So first, let me hold this group to order, and we have the minutes of the July 26th meeting. Are there any additions, changes anybody wants to add? If not, is there a motion to approve? Okay, second? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. David, you wanted to say something first?
Yeah, good afternoon, commissioners, and welcome everyone here for this HPC board meeting. We do have a full agenda today, but before we get started, I did want to acknowledge one person who this will be their last board meeting with us, and I want to acknowledge Undersecretary of Health Alice Moore, who is leaving her position at Health and Human Services and has been just an incredible partner to the Health Policy Commission in her role as the designee of Secretary Sutter's. Thank you for your inputs and your insights, and your partnership and your friendship. We look forward to working with you in your new role at Commonwealth Medicine. But please, Commissioners, join me in thanking Alice Moore for her service. And I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chairman.
So, so let us. We're now reached a stage in our deliberations where we're going to be discussing what are called the performance improvement plans, or PIP, as we like to call it. Now, I just want to remind the commissioners and to everyone in the room how important this issue is, and perhaps the most important activity of the commission going forward. What we're talking about here is that the legislation that's created the Health Policy Commission, Section 224, really gives us the authority and responsibility to working with CHIA to sort of review the performance of all the various health delivery systems and the health plans in terms of how well they are doing relative to the benchmark, and whether there are extenuating circumstances that would require some of the groups to exceed the benchmark, what are they doing to get under the benchmark if they are over it, and and we do have ultimately even responsibility if we find that the benchmark is being exceeded, and generally and individual plans or delivery systems are really not doing much to get under it, even to provide some type of a financial penalty. Now, in that connection, as this process begins, our staff has been looking at various activities and various information from CHIA, and at least during this initial stages, this type of information is confidential, and in order for the plans and the providers to be willing to provide this information, it's important that it stay confidential. So, with that said, but it's also important that we, as commissioners, collectively, not individually, collectively have an opportunity to look at this information and to do some initial discussion. And I'm going to turn this over to our general counsel in a minute to explain what it means, because we have the authority to go into executive session. So I'm going to ask Lois Johnson to give you a little more detail about what it means to go into executive session and how we operate in executive session. So Lois.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Commissioners. As this board discussed when we adopted the performance improvement plan regulations. In the process document that you approved, the board may, at different stages in this review process, elect to meet in executive session in order to comply with the statutory requirements that we keep confidential certain information in connection with the PIP process, including the names of those entities identified by CHIA and we're going to be considering for a PIP. So one of the purposes of executive session that's allowed under the open meeting law is in order to comply with a state law, and that law, as I mentioned, does require that we keep this information confidential. So under the open meeting law, which governs our public bodies meeting and allows for executive session, first we must convene an open session, which we're doing. The chair would then state the purpose and the reason for the executive session and all the subjects that would be discussed in executive session in this open session, and then state whether the commission would reconvene an open session following the executive session, and then vote by roll call to enter into executive sessions. So that's the process that we follow there. The meeting will then be conducted without members of the public in attendance. And once we do enter into executive session, the commissioners may only discuss those matters for which this session was called. The board must keep accurate records of all materials, and minutes of the executive session must be recorded. And all votes in executive session must also be by roll call.
Thank you. So there is a motion that we need to.
Yes.
You want to? The motion you have it here. We don't need to read it. So is there a motion to approve this motion? Okay. All right. All in favor? All right. Okay.
Take it by roll call.
Oh, that's right. We have, and I went through this and I forgot. Okay. We have to go through. So, that's right. Well, we'll start with Lauren.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
So we're going to go into executive session. I want to apologize to those of you in the audience, to those of you, we need to do this process appropriately, which means we had to go into the general session, go executive. So for those of you who, so we're now going to be going to executive session. So we're going to go next door.
You can stay.
You can stay, and we'll try to keep it as brief as reasonable, but we do want to go into some detail. So for those of you who didn't know anything about executive session, I apologize. We will, in the future, well, we did indicate we were going to go in, but in the future, if you, and we're going to go in if you wanted to come a little later, that's all right too. So anyway, we're going to now go next door. Oh, yes. Thanks to Wendy, our vice chair. There are refreshments outside. So, as usual, she has a little more, savoir-faire.